Welcome to another episode of Digital Dive Media Podcast. Today we have my girl, Nia Perry, the founder and CEO of Gradient Global Collective. I would love for us to open up with you telling us about the company.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly, for having me. We are donning both red lips, so it's
Yes,
a good
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So Gradient Global Collective is a new media platform that spotlights and really elevates the global community of Black women entrepreneurs. I started in 2016, really as sort of a pivot from my traditional digital marketing career. And I wanted to do something that was unique and special, specific to Black women entrepreneurs. And really developing the brand and the company was sort of twofold. One was seeing the growth of Black women entrepreneurship in America, knowing that we were the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in this country. Receipts tell a different story. That's a whole other conversation. But the growth, was there and it was undeniable, right? So I saw those data points. And then I also just having sort of an internal motivation to doing something different, something that really spoke to my community, inspired me every day because, for so many years, you kind of go through the race of really building other brands and helping other people because my background is in marketing. We can speak a little bit more about that. But I wanted to do something that meant something to me and meant something to my community. So in late 2016, I launched the brand, Gradient Global Collective, and really didn't have it's interesting because in the beginning, the business model was really specific to, it wasn't directly to the entrepreneur, which in retrospect was a mistake that I made, right? I was really targeting companies that saw the value in Black women as it relates to the dollar that we spend, that also saw the growth in entrepreneurship in this specific demographic, and got it, right? And so there were companies, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies in the financial services space, and really in several different verticals that were investing already in Black women entrepreneurship, specific to it was like Boss Network and other groups. So I saw that there were monies being spent in this area. So that was really my market in the beginning. But, Kelly, I'm sure you've worked in different environments when you are, it's almost like beating down the door to finding a job. It's like, see me, that sort of thing. And at some point you become like, okay, what's really happening here, right?
Right.
So that was sort of happening, but really more than anything, what happened was the election of Donald Trump. I'm just going to say it. And with that came obviously a very sort of anti-multiculturalism movement, where those voices that were being elevated under the previous administration, under President Obama, that were sort of in the forefront with leadership roles, even in government alone, right? Just in the entity itself, were being elevated and highlighted and being represented. All of that went out the window.
Yeah.
With that came almost the divestment, in multicultural marketing, which is really who I was aligning myself with, the multicultural marketers in those Fortune 100 companies. So it was really an interesting pivot that I had to make and figuring out, okay, so because the idea was to create new media products that would target those African-American women, because though I knew it was Black women in America that was having the growth, I sort of instinctively knew that stick-to-itiveness, that drive, that make it happen attitude that Black women in America have was happening around the world. And so before I got a dollar from any other sponsorship, I invested heavily in the brand. I invested in research. I went even if not even just money, just time resources, and finding these women that were doing these incredible things around the world and bringing their voices to one platform, right? So I hadn't seen anything like that specifically. Of course, I was inspired by, Earl Grave Sr. of Black Enterprise and just, the few and far between media platforms that we did have. And that was certainly an inspiration for me in many ways. But I knew that I had something different as it related to this sort of global movement. And that was really something I wanted to leverage, although the Black women in America was really who I knew was watching the content, reading the content, but I knew it was bigger than that. So there were a few sort of perfect storm things happening at the same time with the brand, as it happens in entrepreneurship. And, I was able to bring in some contributors. I was able to produce a capsule podcast collection where I spoke to women from all around the world. So I think that that was something that I really knew was perfect storm happening at the same time. And I realized, okay, so I created this podcast that really featured these amazing entrepreneurs from Haiti, from Nigeria, right here in America, who were doing incredible things and had created businesses that were, investing in their communities, that were bringing families along, growing wealth for individuals. I think of Mirtha Vilbon, who was a woman that I spoke to in Haiti, incredible woman, incredible entrepreneur, who literally changed the trajectory of the health sort of habits of her community. She was able to figure out a way, because Haiti's a very impoverished nation. Mm-hmm. And what I realized is that, and what she realized was that, people were literally dying because they were in such sort of unhygienic environments where they didn't have access to basic things like toilet paper. So she figured out a way to develop single rolls for less than the price of a banana, right? So what does that do for a community, right? That impacts a family, that impacts, communities at large. And so the work that I was able to do during that time of Gradient, I was super inspired by. I was able to bring in some contributing writers who were entrepreneurs and kind of add their voices to the platform as well, and really grew into a collective. And so with our online platform, with the podcast, we were able to feature over 80 Black women entrepreneurs from around the world in over 50 nations. And that was just, looking at the data. And so it was really inspiring for me. I was so grateful to be able to make that impact. I had no idea that it was going to go that route, but it did. And I'm so thankful. But again, when you're looking for sort of that external see me, layered with, those monies that were just no longer there. I mean, there were whole departments, multicultural departments that were dissolved in some of these large organizations. It just no longer was interesting or no longer was necessary, right? So now here, fast forward, a few years with the, murder of George Floyd, and a lot of companies are having to reckon for that and reconcile for that. And so we're seeing some of that change. And with that change for me personally came realizing that, okay, instead of asking for that, that sponsorship, that, partnership to develop this content on the, organization's behalf that really spoke to the entrepreneurs, I really decided and realized that I was making all the mistakes, like sort of rookie mistakes. I should have focused on the entrepreneur herself, community, and then from there, all else will follow. So I'm sort of pivoting in the brand, which is really exciting for me, drawing on my over 20 years experience in marketing. I was 5, honey. I started at 5. But really, truly, I did start in high school. I kind of share that story because, unlike my son who was 15, I started at 16, working and really sewing into my career with internships in the fashion industry. I'm from New York City. And so having that sort of drive early on in my career and being exposed to so many things kind of helped me in the field of marketing specifically. I learned what marketing was in high school. I was really ingrained in that and really wanted to understand what that meant. And just having that knowledge at that early age was enough for me to feel inspired. That lull, there came a lull in my career where I was just like, I just wasn't inspired anymore. That's why Gradient started, inspired by marketing specifically. That's why Gradient started. It was a pivot, put on a producer hat. I put on a sort of a researcher hat in a different way, and different from market research per se. But that was sort of what inspired the brand. And so again, kind of fast forwarding now with the reckoning of all these corporations, I realized that was the mistake, but that I really wanted to focus on that entrepreneur, right? So instead of just giving someone the visibility on a platform, on a media platform, and getting them maybe on sort of these large scale other media platforms, or even my, sort of startup platform, if you will, because I still feel like I'm in a startup stage with the brands. I really wanted to bring all of that marketing experience that I've acquired over the year in corporate America, doing it in an entrepreneurial respect, to those individual entrepreneurs, specifically early stage Black women entrepreneurs who are literally just putting pen to paper on their dream less than a year in, right? Because there's so many sort of mistakes that I can help mitigate very early on, because I'm finding that, as you know, Kelly, honey, we Black women, we like to look the part, honey. We want to look good. But what does that mean? That often means that we are, especially as entrepreneurs, that we're investing in things that don't make sense. We're investing in things that do not yield return, right? So we want to have the photo shoot, but there are no revenues coming into your business. We want to have this, flash and bang website that looks amazing, but it's not even effective. And it's not really, actually, you're
driving
not
business.
You're not getting any traffic. You're not, building your email list. There's no real use for it. It's just pretty and it looks good. But these are rookie mistakes. These are things that you just don't, if you don't know, you just don't know. And so I really wanted to scale back. And, some people are specialists in very sort of specific areas. I really am sort of a generalist, which is not always valued by, large companies or of this such. But for me, I knew that because I've had a lot of sort of wide experience, that I knew that I could bring that to an entrepreneur that just doesn't have any understanding of really how to get in front of an audience. So that's what I'm doing now. And, working with these early stage, as I mentioned, Black women to really help them develop their brand and market their business.
So let's talk about that. So if you're focusing with early stage, most anyone in the field of marketing, we've all had the experience, whether we're in-house or whether we're being sourced out as an external agency, there seems to be, you're kind of the first one on the chopping block should budgets get cut. Especially right now, I know of colleagues who have told me their entire marketing departments have been eliminated during COVID. So how do you find the sweet spot to be able to focus your targets on startup entrepreneurs with a service that a lot of people sometimes don't see it as the most or one of the most important things they should be doing?
There are a few things here. So for me, one, I understand this particular group of entrepreneurs because I've been her, right? I've made those rookie mistakes. Even as a marketer, I overinvested in areas that I should not have. Really, the reason why I did that with Gradient, and I mean, we were talking, a nice, healthy amount of money, which a very seasoned entrepreneur and mentor of mine told me, kind of chalk it up to like an education, like chalk it up to, like a year of college, of Harvard, whatever school did it, that's what you kind of got to learn along the way, right? But I knew for me specifically, teaching that group of women is important to me because I care enough to want to serve them. What I'm offering is not so much service-based, but it's going to be via a course. So I'm doing live coaching where I'm going to be able to bring a group of women in. Instead of and I have a student that's going to be in my course coming up. She's invested $300, over $300 in a logo. Why? That's not a good use of your funds as an entrepreneur, as a startup entrepreneur.
Because they're limited. The funds are limited.
What's the point of that? You always can grow. You can always pivot. All the big companies do it. Internet Explorer, that little E has changed how many times? I saw something about Doritos. Doritos started with one logo and has evolved how many times over the years since we were growing up, So I think it's a mindset that I really want to help first adjust and saying you don't have to spend money that doesn't make sense, right? Because I've been there, I've made those mistakes, but also I know what you need, even if you don't know what you need. So it's a matter of conversation and saying, you certainly need to invest in marketing. It is a business function. It will bring you revenue. It will bring you sales if done right? But you don't have to spend a lot of money early on to be able to yield the money that you want as revenue. So that's the priority for me. And I know that I have sort of base level things that are affordable resources that people can invest very little in. Some areas you're just going to have to make some investment in, but let me invest in me, and then I'll show you cost-effective ways to go about doing what you need to do. And I'll show you the things that you don't even realize you need to do, like building an email list.
And then I want to circle back to, you mentioned the perfect storm. And I've definitely, as a Black female entrepreneur, can definitely attest to seeing a perfect storm of opposition and opportunity in the last few months. You have, on one end of the spectrum, you have people digging their heels into their beliefs or ideals, and that creates a bit of a divide racially. And then on the other end, you have corporations from the very top saying, hey, we see you. We are going to, which to me is a little unprecedented, except when Nike did the ad with Colin Kaepernick 2 years ago, and everybody's complaint was, stay out of it. Corporations aren't supposed to do this. They're not supposed to get involved in this. I knew there was a pivot then. Nike's not going to go out on that limb, just kind of fly by the seat of their pants. So I knew then a shift was coming. And as tensions kept growing, and now we kind of hit this perfect storm back in May, big companies reacted quickly. They didn't care who said they weren't spending money with them anymore. They didn't care who put out, horrible things on social media about them. They kind of just dug in. What do you think the future looks like going forward? Do you think that this sudden surge of attention on us specifically, a lot of Black female, there's a lot of grants going on right now, a lot of help being offered. Do you think that this is a marketing ploy in and of itself, or do you think this is just how it's going to be?
Oh, certainly. There's certainly some sort of invested interest in, companies looking the part and wanting to make sure that they are sort of not tone deaf in a time when, a lot of companies are still tone deaf. There are people who are still not even speaking on it because it's too risky, or not even about the risks. They just don't care or don't believe enough, right? But I think that, Black people specifically and allies who actually align, who care, you're going to see that we just are not allowing it being ignored anymore. Like, you cannot put that genie back in the bottle. It's too late. We've had it up to here. I know personally, I am someone that, having been in corporate America and work with different sort of entities and having to be stifled, I just don't want to do that anymore. And I'm not going to do it anymore. Because why? I have a voice. I'm certainly always going to be professional. I'm always going to be polished as best I can. But I'm also never going to not speak on things that are not important to me, because I have a right to, number one. No one's going to allow you to speak on things that you're not comfortable with. Okay? And then number two, we have a responsibility to do that. We have a responsibility to say, that's not okay. I mean, let the chips fall where they may, Kelly. And I've experienced, backlash as a result of that. But as I've become older,
big 25.
25 is a big deal, honey. I realized that I'm no longer going to do that. And now that just comes with courage. As you get older, you get a little bit more courage. And I'm going to hold companies accountable. And that might look different in different ways. Maybe you don't invest in them. Maybe you don't buy their products. Maybe you actually send a letter. Maybe you send an email. Maybe you speak up in a meeting. Maybe you speak up in a client, interaction. And it's going to take all of us to make that happen.
The other thing that I've seen that's been really, really interesting, the combination of what we're talking about, as well as possible layoffs or just not feeling comfortable leaving the house to go back to your job. There's been a surge in entrepreneurship. And I've seen particularly the Black community really band together. And their calls for the replacement of all sorts of products, from big ticket items to small ticket items, of them wanting to, number one, support you as an entrepreneur, a Black entrepreneur, and number two, what was I going to say? Support you as a Black entrepreneur, but also give back to the community and just kind of keep that loop going. And I find it so exciting that at the base of all of this is social. It's digital. We are making these connections, and we're building, and we're growing, and we're promoting, we're launching businesses from our homes, like literally now. And I think remember a time where people were like, we don't need to be on social media. And then like the world shuts down and everybody's like, oh, wait, we can't do anything in person. Like now we have to like figure out how to do a Zoom call or how to do a presentation. So when you said the perfect storm, I just feel like it made complete and total sense of where I feel we are, not only as a community, but just as professionals in this industry. Like we're the plug right now. Like you should have your marketing ducks in a row for digital.
And there's no getting around it, right?
No.
And actually it's cost effective. Like you don't have to, you may not have the money to do like real lead gen and like really, put money into like ads and that sort of thing. But social media is still powerful and it's still free at this point. So leverage it. And I'm not naive or unaware of the woes that people are experiencing, right? And layoffs and that sort of thing. But there is no time like the present to start something else.
Yeah.
Like, what are we waiting for, right? If you're fortunate to have an opportunity to still be working, which a lot of people take some of that and invest in you, because we are, as you can see in this work, in the workplace environment, we can be expendable. It's not always a good thing, but like you said, whole marketing teams are gone.
Just
right?
being let go. Yeah.
Just let go. And that's, and it's not like marketing isn't an essential part of your business strategy. How are you letting go of the marketing team when you need to market to stay engaged? But I'm maybe partial because I am a marketer, so I may be looking at things a little bit differently.
I think it's a strange mentality, and it doesn't really make sense. How do you get your brand in front of people? No one can do business with you if they don't know about you. So how is that happening? It doesn't mean it's the only important thing in a business, but it is still important. And right now, literally, if you are not on a social platform, you're nowhere. Right. And this is just like the reality of today. Whole conferences have just been canceled. Some people are attempting to do the virtual conference. I've not witnessed that. I don't know how it works, but
I think it becomes overwhelmed too. So it's a tricky thing because, you already spend enough all day really on Zoom and these sort of platforms. And then, you're having to turn around and be on a conference that may be a 2 or 3 day conference. I know a friend and colleague was just on, she's with the National Association of Black Journalists and APJ. And they just had a virtual, sort of conference. And you kind of have to make do, especially when people are highly and heavily invested in, attending your event. But some things are just going to have to, it's interesting. It's a tough time.
Like trying to pick the nice words.
Yeah. Because business still has to go on, right? Things still have to continue. And so, you certainly don't want to not host, maybe a pillar event or sort of a signature event. But you also, I think there has to be an amends. Like, you have to be mindful of pivoting what that looks like. Even watching the Democratic National Convention, they have the resources to quickly, kind of have, different settings and different people to keep the eye engaged. What happens when you're on an online event? And things are not moving as quickly, you're not interacting, you're not networking as well as you maybe at one point were doing. So it's a tough thing. But I'm not someone that's going to say don't do it, because you still have to keep that visibility. You still have to sort of be relevant. So we just kind of have to make it happen. But for the women that I'm serving at this point, they better not be trying to launch any type of online event. That's not important. Getting press at this point is not important. What's important? Making money, being revenue, in the black, like let's make money. Like that's the focus. And so I really want to keep the message and keep the activities that I'm going to be doing in my life coaching to those specific things. And I'm doing all of this as a way to sort of dovetail back into Gradient. I'm sort of in a place of reimagining what that brand is, and it's exciting, but I realized that I want to serve that entrepreneur first. So let me bring, as I mentioned, my experience to them and then sort of maybe translate that into Gradient in some way. So I'm kind of thinking through, but I know that now is the time to do what I'm doing right now. It feels right, and I know that it is right. So it's perfect for me.
Yeah, I think it's been a reflective time for a lot of people. I don't know if it's the literal slowdown we all had to do at least at some point earlier this year that's made people just reflect, what am I doing? If I am an entrepreneur, does this business make sense? If I'm not an entrepreneur and I'm laid off or I'm furloughed or my hours have been cut, how am I going to eat? I think, I think some people are anti the entrepreneurship thing. And I understand it's not a lifestyle for everybody, but in times like this, you have to figure something out. Maybe it's not the dream business you had hoped for, but maybe you throw up a Shopify store and sell some things or like something, because, you have to do something.
I know someone that is so she's always been super talented. She's fortunate in that she's working still. But, as I've been sort of reaching out to my network and sort of sharing what I've been doing with people, she reached out to me immediately, said, I'm definitely interested in that kind of thing. So as we are starting in our conversation and really kind of doing a deep dive in the questions that I had of her, I said, well, why is it now? She said, your email and your communication with me is why it's now. She said, I've been sitting on this idea for 8 years. I've been sitting on these talents and these skills for 8 years, but you sort of were a catalyst to bring forth this thing now. So, I mean, stuff like that, you know, I know that my messaging and what I want to convey to these women is that you can do it now. And it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. And it shouldn't cost you a lot of money to get live. You can get a free logo.
Yeah.
You might not love it.
Yeah.
To start. And that's the point. You have to start somewhere. You know, everything is not going to be slick and beautiful. Sometimes you have to grow, you know, incrementally. And that's really the best way to go. You might scale very quickly where you're able to bring in a branding team at some point. But these early stage entrepreneurs, because the income for early stage, you know, is not very high necessarily. Right. We want to be strategic. We want to be smart about how we're spending on marketing because you really do need to market your business. There's no getting away around it. It's a good time. I know it's a very stressful time. It's an overwhelming time, you know, per the knocks and the dings and the baby voices in the back, all of that. And I'm not immune to that, right? I'm not immune to difficulty during this time or just stress and overwhelm because I'm human and I have a family. We've all experienced some level of that. We all know someone who has gotten COVID or passed from COVID or, you know, you hear the stories. And so no one is immune to that. And so I understand the emotional toll that is happening right now, but what better time than now to do something that makes you feel good, that you know is the right thing to do, and that helps your family at the end of the day. So it's not just about being slick and cool because I want to be a cool entrepreneur. It's about livelihood at this
survival.
Yeah. Survival.
1,000%.
And it's okay to humble yourself and saying, listen, I need to go get a job. It might not be the best job, but you can go get a job, but use some of that to invest in something for yourself. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to answer to your family. You're going to have to answer to your bill collectors, whatever that may be for you. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I specifically want to help Black women because we have all the skills, the talent, the ability to make it happen because we've been doing it for so long for so many.
Well, that was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful interview with Miss Nia Perry.
Thank you, my dear. Kelly. So nice she had to be named twice.
I know. Well, we appreciate you. How can someone get in touch with you if they're interested in the coaching or learning more about your company or you? What's the best way to contact you?
Sure. So right now I'm taking sort of 15-minute sort of discovery calls. So if you are a Black women entrepreneur or you're just, like I said, just putting your pen to paper, which is so exciting for me because it's kind of very early stage and imagining and you got all the fear. But for me, that makes me feel good because you're in good hands. And then also, or if you're less than a year in, you know you haven't been marketing your business, you don't really even know where to start. You think it's everyone is your market. Everyone is not your market. Go to bit.ly. Don't overspend on marketing. And that's all lowercase. Don't overspend on marketing. And you can book a 15-minute call with me, or you can connect with me directly on my Instagram. It's probably a good way to do it as well. My personal Instagram at CEO_Nia Perry, at CEO_Nia Perry. And if you want to keep up with what Gradient Global is doing, you can follow us on IG as well at Gradient Global.
Thank you so much, Nia. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it.